Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Admissions and Financial Aid session. I'm Mary D'Angelo, the Dean of Admissions, and I am joined today by Troy Davis, the Director of Financial Aid. And we're the captains of this navigation today, okay? So what we are hoping to do over the next half hour, 45 minutes or so, is really we're hoping to demystify both the admissions and the financial aid processes. Does that sound like a good thing? Great. So how many folks in the room have already been through this process with another student? So they're going to be outside afterwards. They're the real experts here, okay? To take all of your questions. But for the rest of you, this is probably a little bit intimidating, right? If you're going through it for the first time. And I know that you're looking at a number of different institutions with different requirements and different processes. So we want to make sure when you leave Springfield College today, you are ready to go with both the admissions process and the financial aid process. So that is the goal. You can let us know at the end if we've been successful. And then because you will have sat with us for a period of time, then we're going to let you go to lunch. So we're going to start with admissions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Troy. Springfield College is a common application school. Students, how many of you have already been in to the common application site? Great, excellent. So you know that through that site, you're going to have an opportunity to apply to any of the institutions on your list who are members of the common application. So it makes it a little bit more streamlined and makes it a little bit easier. And that was really our goal when we went to the Common App several years ago, to help you to have this be a little bit more of an efficient process. As part of the application, there are certain credentials that you are going to be required to submit. And I'm going to walk through those with you, both the academic credentials and the personal credentials, because I want you to know, what do we do with those things when we receive them, right? How do we weigh certain factors over others? I want you to know how the admissions team is going to be reviewing your application. So let's start with the academic credentials. Springfield College for the fall of 22 is completely test optional, okay? So last year we were completely test optional because so many students were having a hard time accessing the SAT and the ACT. And that still continues to be a little bit of a problem. I know for those of you last year in your junior year, you just didn't have the same number of opportunities to test as students would have had pre-pandemic. So for fall of 22, we are completely test optional. It does not matter what your intended major is. You do not need to submit the results of either the SAT or the ACT. So what that means is with the academic evaluation, we're going to be focused on your high school transcript. And I want you to know that we don't just look at GPA and plug it into a computer and say, okay, they meet our standards for GPA. That's not the way we do things. I always say to a new member of the admissions staff, when you look at a transcript, flash back to high school biology when you dissected a frog, because that's what we want you to do with the transcript, okay? So we are looking at the sequence of courses that you have taken throughout your 4 years. We are looking at the level of difficulty of the coursework. So for those of you who have made a decision to challenge yourself with honors work, advanced placement, dual enrollment, through another college or university nearby your home, we are going to look at that, and that is part of our equation and part of our review. Once we have a sense of what you've taken and the level of the coursework, then we're going to look at your GPA, okay? And we will actually do a recalculation of your GPA if your high school does not provide us with a weighted GPA. So if we get a GPA from your high school that is unweighted, we do a recalculation so we can take into account those honors courses, the advanced courses that you may have challenged yourself with, okay? The other credentials that we look at are what we consider more the personal credentials. So as part of the common application, you are going to be required to write an essay, okay? The good news is there are several prompts for you to choose from. So there's not just one prompt. There's, I believe, 7, where you will be able to take a look at all of those questions and say, all right, which one do I think will help the admissions staff learn the most about me? So where can I really share information that will be useful? Because what I always say to students is look at the essay as your voice in the process. Your transcript is your transcript. Your references, even though I'm sure they're all going to be stellar, that's somebody else talking about you. It's helpful to us. We appreciate that, but there's nothing better than you talking to us. Okay, so look at the essay as your chance to communicate. We read the essays. I know sometimes students feel I'm putting all this effort into this, they're probably just going to skim it. We don't just skim it, we truly read it. And quite honestly, it's my favorite part of reviewing an application. The other things that we look at are those recommendations. Okay, so as part of the Common App, you are required to submit an academic recommendation. If you want to submit 2, 3, we're going to read them all. If your school counselor is writing you a letter of recommendation, we're going to look at that as well. That will be part of the review. So even though we might only ask for 1, the Common App only asks for 1, we are going to review whatever you send in to us, okay? So when we are done with this review of your application, we've literally read everything in there. We've done a very, in my opinion, a very thorough and a very fair review of the credentials that you have sent to us. So I talked about a recalculated GPA earlier, okay? So that we do a recalc GPA if we don't get a weighted GPA from your high school, because that's how we award merit here at Springfield. It is based strictly on a recalculated GPA. So don't think that even though we're test optional, you have to send us test scores in order to be considered for merit. We are making our merit decisions based strictly on your recalculated GPA. Don't feel like you have to write all of this down. This is very transparent on our website, okay? But I think it's important for families to know that when we make an admissions decision, when we decide to offer somebody acceptance to the college, part of that acceptance packet is a letter telling you what level of merit you qualified for, okay? It's not need-based, strictly merit-based, and you learn about it from the admissions office. We already did that one. So application deadlines. I know that as you are dealing with a lot of, searching and looking and talking to different colleges, you're probably getting super confused by all of the application programs that are out there. There's early decision, there's early action, there's rolling admission. What do all of those things mean? So let me say that for Springfield, we only offer 2. We offer early decision and rolling admission. Okay, we do not have early action, but you will see that there are some programs that have earlier deadlines than our general admissions deadline. Okay, so our general admissions deadline, rolling admissions, is April 1st. For the programs of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and physician assistant, we do have earlier deadlines and will not accept applications after those deadlines. So if you're looking at any of those programs, just keep in mind that you're going to have an earlier deadline than our regular deadline. So rolling admissions, what does that mean? What that means is when a student applies, sends in all of the required credentials, that's the point that they go into review. We have students in review right now. Okay, there were some early birds out there who got all of their materials in because the common application went live on August 1st. So students had a chance to do that. So we will start releasing admissions decisions on a rolling basis. Okay, so students, you really can control your own timeline here. If you want to hear on the earlier side, apply on the earlier side. Don't wait until, nobody waits until April 1st. So just so you know, the heaviest months in terms of applications coming to us are November, December, and January. That's when most students apply. So you get your credentials in, we review, we render a decision. If you're accepted, we notify financial aid, and then they start their process of reviewing your financial aid application. Students do have, unless you're early decision, students do have until May 1 to let us know of their intention to come to Springfield. So even if you hear from us in November, you may not have heard from your other institution. So you're going to want to have a chance to get all of your decisions, all of your financial aid packages, then maybe have another opportunity to come back to campus, to all of the schools you've been accepted to. So May 1, and we do not pressure students to deposit ahead of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about early decision because I know there are some students in the room who are possibly considering early decision. The important thing to know about early decision, it is really designed for students who have identified that Springfield College is their first choice. Because if a student gets admitted early decision, if they receive a favorable financial aid award, we ask them to let us know earlier, before May 1, okay? So for early decision 1, students have an admissions deadline of December 1st. We guarantee them a decision by the 1st of February, and then we ask them to let us know of their decision to enroll by March 1. Okay, so 2 months earlier than regular. Early decision 2, an application deadline of January 15th. We guarantee students a decision in early March, and then we ask them to let us know by April 1, which is a month ahead of regular admission. Okay, so, you know, students, if you don't know that Springfield is your first choice, that's okay. We're fine with that. If that's your situation, rolling admissions would be the way you would want to go and not early. So now I'm going to turn the mic over to Troy, who is going to demystify financial aid.
Good afternoon. My name is Troy Davis. I'm the Director of Financial Aid, and we're going to spend about 20 minutes talking about what financial aid is, where it comes from, and some other topics related to financial aid, such as the cost of attendance, what an expected family contribution is and how it's calculated, what is financial need, the categories, types, and sources of financial aid. We'll actually talk a little bit about the FAFSA, and what to do if there's special circumstances, things that are not covered on the FAFSA, and then we'll finish with the Springfield College application process. First, I wanted to talk about the partnership that is financial aid. So financial aid, there are 3 partners involved in the financial aid process, and that's the student and family, Springfield College, and government agencies. We all have a part to play in this to make sure that the financial aid process runs smoothly for the student. What is a cost of attendance? And this is a term that used to actually, most people didn't hear. Now it's more and more common and people do know what it is or hear it. In the financial aid office, we start with this number. It's a big picture of what it costs your son or daughter to go to Springfield College for 1 year. It includes both direct and indirect expenses. So direct costs would be tuition fees, room and board if the student is going to live on campus. Indirect expenses are books and supplies, personal miscellaneous, and transportation to and from campus. This is the big number we start with when we're calculating eligibility for financial aid. The two numbers are combined to come up with the cost of attendance, and they vary widely from school to school. You have community colleges that are going to have a lower cost of attendance. You have mid-price schools, and you have higher price schools that are going to have a very large cost of attendance. Here are our costs for the 21-22 academic year. The total bill for a student living on campus, first-year student living on campus, would be $53,800 in 21-22. The Board of Trustees will announce shortly of the 22-23 costs, but you will certainly know that number before the first set of award letters go out. There's another term that you'll hear a lot in the financial aid process, and that's expected family contribution. The expected family contribution is a calculation that tells the college what the family can reasonably expect to pay for that student to attend school for the upcoming academic year. There are two components. There's the parent contribution and the student contribution, but they're added together to come up with the EFC, expected family contribution. It's calculated using data from the FAFSA, and it uses a formula that's nationwide, a national formula. So your EFC at a school in Montana, at Springfield College, and a local community college is going to be exactly the same. But here's where you'll see a difference. We start with the cost of attendance, which we talked about. That's that big number of what it costs to send your son or daughter to school for 1 year. We subtract from that the expected family contribution, and what we're left with is financial need. That's what we're trying to meet in the financial aid office. This, in a very, very, very simple terms, is what we do in the financial aid office. So let's talk about the different categories of financial aid. Financial aid comes in two categories. The first category is gift aid. This is the good stuff. This is what you want the most of, and the name tells you something about it. It's a gift and does not have to be repaid. Gift aid is divided into two different categories: scholarships and grants. And to you, the family, they work exactly the same. They're free money that comes off the bill. But in a financial aid office or at a college campus, they mean something different. Scholarships are awarded based on some sort of talent or merit or ability that we're hoping that student brings and demonstrates on our campus. There may be strings attached to renewing that scholarship. The student may have to participate in a certain activity. They may have to have a certain grade point average. They probably are going to have to be a full-time student, but there would be a list of criteria for renewing that scholarship. Grants are based on financial need. So the organization funding that grant has their own definition of need. The federal government, Springfield College, the Kiwanis, any other organization that has a need-based grant. The second type of financial aid is self-help. Again, the name tells us something about it. The student is going to have to do something to receive this financial aid. It again is divided into two categories: loans and work study. Loans, we know what those are. It's money that's borrowed and has to be repaid at a later date. And work study. Work study is an oddball in the financial aid world because we award it in the financial aid office and then we're done. HR takes over after that. Students are paid for the hours they work. It does not come off the bill. So a student will receive a paycheck every 2 weeks based on the hours that they work during that pay period. And it's important not to go over that number. The sources of financial aid. Financial aid comes from various sources, including the federal government, state governments, the colleges and universities themselves, civic and religious organizations and private foundations, as well as employers. In this slide, I wanted to show you how generous the Springfield College financial aid program is. For the 21-22 academic year, the current year we're in, for main campus undergraduate students, of all financial aid that we've processed, 77% of that comes from the college itself. The federal government is 21%, and those really, really small 1% are the state and private organizations. Federal government aid is based almost entirely on need, and the student must apply for that every year by completing a new FAFSA. Springfield College participates in the federal Pell Grant Program, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant Program, Federal Work Study, direct loans for students, as well as the direct loan program for parents to borrow for undergraduate students. The states also offer a grant program, and there used to be a lot of reciprocity in New England. Unfortunately, as state budgets got tighter, that reciprocity ended. And there are usually residency requirements, and it can be awarded based on merit and or need. It uses information from the FAFSA, and there are deadlines. The deadlines vary from state to state. Typically, Massachusetts has a May 1st deadline, but during the pandemic, they have been extending that a short period of time, but plan on May 1st for the Massachusetts deadline. There are also private sources that you don't want to overlook. We see a lot of money come in with the first year class every year in the form of private scholarships, and then that number drops dramatically as for second, third, and fourth year students. And I believe it's because the students just don't continue that search every year for new scholarships. There's no reason. Many of the scholarships are available for returning students, but they're not doing those searches. So that there's deadlines and application procedures are going to vary by organization. And you want to begin your search early. So I would say right now, you want to start that search for private scholarships. You'll see a lot of deadlines in January, February, March, and April. And then they really start to close down by May 1st. You want to investigate information that's through your high school guidance office and your local newspaper and library. Because they don't advertise in the large national databases. We recommend a database called fastweb.com. And there's also the Community Foundation of Western Mass. The great thing about the Community Foundation is they have one application for about 140 scholarships. Don't forget employers. Parent employers may offer one or two or both options. Companies offer scholarships that are available to the sons and daughters of their employees, and other companies may offer a reimbursement program. You bring a copy of the student's grades to the HR office at the end of the term, and they will reimburse you for an amount based on those grades. So let's talk about the FAFSA. This is how you get the financial aid. It's a standard form that collects demographic and financial information about the student and family. It may be filed electronically or using a paper form. However, 99.9999% of our students file it electronically, and I strongly recommend that you do that. It's available in English and Spanish, and it all happens at studentaid.gov. There's two steps that you'll complete at studentaid.gov. The first is you need an FSA ID. An FSA ID is your electronic signature. One parent and the student each need an FSA ID. That's the first step, and you can do that today when you go home. The second step is filling out the FAFSA. It is also done at studentaid.gov. The FAFSA can be filed at any time for the next academic year after October 1st. So October 1st is when? This coming Friday. So you can start your 22-23 FAFSA this coming Friday. We recommend that you do the FAFSA on the web or the electronic version for several reasons. There are built-in edits to help you avoid costly errors. For example, if you were to say there's 3 in the house and 7 in college, they're going to question that. There's skip logic. So based on how you answer some questions early in the application, they may not ask you other questions later in the application. So you and your neighbor's FAFSA may look different. And there's the optional IRS DRT, data retrieval tool. I put optional because it isn't required, but I strongly recommend you use the DRT. What the DRT does is it links your FAFSA to your tax return, and it pulls the data over from the IRS and fills in the FAFSA for you. So all you're filling in is demographic information and asset information, and you're done. It's very simple, and it'll save you time and headaches filling out the FAFSA, but it'll also save you time down the road. There's detailed instructions and help. There's the ability to check your application online, and it also simplifies the application process in future years because the Department of Ed will roll some data forward into 23-24, and then you're only updating that application for the next year. So the FAFSA doesn't cover every possible situation. So what do you do if there's a situation that isn't covered? You want to contact the school directly, and you're going to be asked for documentation from each of those schools, and you're going to get a different answer from each of the schools. Some schools may say there's nothing further we can do. Other schools may say, yes, there is, and we'll offer some additional aid. These decisions are final and cannot be appealed to the Department of Education. So some possible special circumstances that we consider here at Springfield College would be like a change in employment status or a loss of income, medical dental expenses not covered by insurance, changes in the parent's marital status since filing the FAFSA, as well as unusual dependent care expenses. And that can include elder care. We use a portal in the financial aid office called My Financial Aid. So when we start sending out award letters, which will probably be the first half of November, the first award letter will come to you in a paper form. And it's a very pretty brochure, and it lists all your financial aid in it. But that's the last paper version you'll receive. Everything is electronic from that point on, and we want you to use, and you will be using a portal called My Financial Aid. It says we'll mail you credentials shortly after the student's acceptance. However, we're trying very, very, very hard to have single sign-on before the first set of award letters go out. So we're hoping once you log into PrideNet, you'll be able to get into My Financial Aid. Things that you can do through My Financial Aid: you can upload documents that we're requesting. You can view, accept, and decline your awards. You can track your application materials and see what is missing and what we've received. And you can link to some documents that are available on the web. We have a scholarship search page, and you can read messages and related to your financial aid, like terms and conditions. The last thing I want to plug is this service that we subscribe to at Springfield College called FATV. And you can get to it if you go to springfield.edu and search Get Answers, and you'll come to this page. It has hundreds of very short 2 to 3 minute videos that will answer your questions about financial aid. It's available 24/7 every single day of the year. The only thing I would say is be patient. It's not hosted here at Springfield College, and sometimes the videos take a little bit of time to load. But you can ask, what is a Pell Grant? How do I fill out a FAFSA? What is the FSA ID? There's videos to help explain all of that. And the last thing is questions and answers. If you have questions for me or Mary, feel free to ask them. We'll also stick around and answer questions that you don't feel uncomfortable asking in front of your closest friends. So does anybody have any questions to start us off? Yes, ma'am.
My question was on the early decision. I had thought early decision was binding, such that if you applied early decision, you were committing that if you got accepted, you would come here. The slides seem to suggest that you would wait for a response from the student with their decision, which then had me question whether I understood early decision or not.
Okay, so the question is about early decision and whether or not it's binding. Early decision programs really are as binding as they can be, right? So we do expect that if a student applies early decision, if they're admitted and they receive a favorable financial aid award, that they will commit by those earlier deadlines that I mentioned. Okay, but obviously if a family, if a student's admitted early decision, a family gets the financial aid award, and they determine we just can't make this happen, we cannot at that point force a student to enroll.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other
There's a
questions?
question right here.
The deadline for application for the PA program has to have 4 hours of shadowing done.
So the question is about shadowing hours for the PA program and whether or not those need to be done by the application deadline. No, they don't need to be done by the deadline. The application deadline, they need to be done by the credential deadline. Okay. For students who apply to the PA program for December 1, they have until January 1st to submit any supporting credentials. If they go through the second round of early and apply January 15th, they have until February 1 to get the shadowing hours in. But I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to point out that in the programs that require some type of shadowing hours, so physical therapy, physician assistant, occupational therapy, athletic training, we have waived that requirement again for fall of 22 applicants because there, with the uptick in COVID, there are medical facilities that are once again limiting volunteers. So there are other ways for students to demonstrate how they've learned about those programs, and that's all available on the website under that particular academic page. Okay. I think there's a question all the way in the back.
So if you go to springfield.edu and in the search box at the top, if you just type in "Get Answers," it will bring you to this page called "Get Answers."
So the question is, do the merit scholarship programs continue past 4 years? Because some of the programs that we offer are direct entry that lead directly into graduate school. The merit award is good for 8 semesters. Okay, but then when a student transitions into the 5th year, and in the case of physical therapy physician assistant, the 6 years, we do award them grant funding. It's not at the same level as the merit award. What is it currently for?
For this class, it'll be $10,000 a year. If you're a direct entry applicant who came in directly from, not transferred in, but came in directly, you qualify.
But keep in mind that for graduate study, there are other forms of assistance available, graduate assistantships, fellowships. So there are other opportunities for students to receive additional funding.
No, that's a main campus undergraduate student living on campus. Those are the costs. So graduate tuition is billed at a per credit basis, and it's a different credit. So that rate is for a student who's registered anywhere from 12 to 18. Any number in there, they're billed the same thing. But on a graduate student, if they're taking 7 credits, they're billed for 7 credits. If they're taking 12, they're billed for 12. I knew you were going to answer. Off the top of my head, I believe it's 1176. Per credit. Yes.
Does it make a difference if you select the FAFSA before or after?
The 2 processes should run side by side. We will get a FAFSA in about 3 days after you submit it. So obviously the application process is a little bit slower. Application for admission is a little bit slower, but the 2 should run side by side, because once we have a valid FAFSA and we have an offer for admission, we're going to send you out an award letter. And that usually happens within 2 days of when those 2 things meet.
They're quick in the financial aid office.
Yes, actually, we've been asked to slow down sometimes.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you for the questions you asked. They really were great. And how do you go to lunch?